Okay, so Mercury is turning retrograde on April 1st, 2024. So what does that mean for everybody? Confusion, disorganization, messes, mix-ups, flawed works, inconsistency, incoherence, failures, contract and agreement breakdowns, scapegoat opportunities for people who are looking for them. Is that what we should just lay down and accept no matter what? No. This astrologer says no. For those of you who have not seen them yet, I do have both monthly astrological forecasts for April, as well as weekly astrological and tarot forecasts that have already covered what is going on with the Mercury retrograde transit for each sign and where it shows up for them. So I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time, if any, talking about that so much, because I've already done it twice. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to thrive during a Mercury retrograde transit and to understand what is really going on a spiritual, energetic, alchemical, magical level when it comes to Mercury and this transit, and what makes the Mercury retrograde in Aries so unique and what we need to be prepared for as we go through this month. So, when we talk about the planet Mercury, Mercury rules a lot of very important factors, energetically speaking, when it comes to our everyday lives and, of course, our astrological charts. Mercury rules intelligence, communications, contracts, agreements, collaboration, travel, education, and even velocity. When we talk about speed, we talk about the rate in which things move or change or progress or however things are in motion. And that is very much in line with, well, the Gemini side of the Mercury rulership. But Mercury also rules organization, improvement, productivity, precision, fixing and correcting things, coherence, study, clarity, and purity, which leans more on the side of the Virgo end of the Mercury ruler spectrum. And when we have Mercury go retrograde, it's important to remember that all of these rulings are actually still in play. It's just that when Mercury is retrograde or appearing to go backwards in our sky, we are experiencing these energies almost like particles hitting us from another direction. And so it's going to be throwing off a lot of the usual flows that we have in our world. And that's what makes Mercury retrograde such a jumble for everybody. It's the same energy, but it's coming from another direction, or it feels like it's going in another direction, and it's shaking a lot of things up. So some important reminders and recommendations that you can apply to any Mercury retrograde, not just this Mercury retrograde in Aries. Because its energies are flowing in different ways in regards to its orientation to the Earth, when we have a retrograde going on, think of it again like a laser beam's particles contacting us from another side than normal. Much of Mercury's rulings start to get imparted in different ways and bring their correspondences into forms that focus on revisions, reviews, redirects, revisits, reversals, as well as restarts, retrievals, and even test runs. And these things can, yes, and often do, disrupt, throw off, or shake up circumstances in our lives as a great deal of pre-established or even unexplored situations and opportunities start to get revealed and sometimes bump up against other things that we have going on. So with that, and understanding that that's really what's going on, we can also, well, take to heart that this can offer us a lot of opportunities to get ahead, right? Not just survive a Mercury retrograde, but to really actually thrive like a real magician when it comes to this kind of work. So let's talk about some Mercury retrograde advantages and disadvantages, some do's and don'ts that you want to keep in mind, not only going through this month, but also any Mercury retrograde. First off, let's talk about some do's. It's a great time for any kind of work where you would like to reverse, undo, backpedal, or unmake any kind of situations that you wish to remove from yourself or remove yourself from with less resistance than if you were to attempt such when Mercury was direct. So is there anything that you want to renegotiate? Is there anything that you want to escape? Is there something that you want to take off your plate? Or again, reverse or undo? Anything that, you would like to see go away or maybe back up? Right? This applies to situations imposed on you by others, contracts, agreements, and situations you've created for yourself. It does not matter. This is also a great time to initiate non-committed test runs, experiments, and trials of ideas. Things that you're not 100% sure about, but you want to just kind of test the waters with. Things that maybe you aren't sure you want to make a long-term commitment to, or maybe you're in a place of experimentation. You really just don't know what you want to commit to or what kind of road you want to take on. This is a great time for that. Projects, paths, connections, relationships, collaborations. However, when it comes to commitments, contracts, and travel plans and big purchases, of course you want to make sure, whatever kind, whether it's an experiment or it's something that you're committed to, that you're going through everything with a fine-toothed comb. And the reason I'm saying it that way is because there are going to be things that come up during this period where you may have to go against textbook cookie-cutter Mercury retrograde wisdom, right? You might have to still make a deal. You may have to still make a plan. You may have to get ready to do some traveling or buy plane tickets or whatever is going on. Life doesn't stop for Mercury retrograde. And so even if you have to do things, whether it's for permanent or for short term, just make sure you're being extra careful, you're doing your due diligence, and you're not outsourcing that responsibility to others to take care of you during this time, right? We want to make sure that we are being extra mindful because mistakes can happen. There's a lot of activity going on. People aren't concentrating as well. They might not be communicating as well. They might not be listening as well. This is just a part of life. And again, life doesn't stop for astrology. And astrology can still work for us even when we have Mercury retrograde going on. So you may find yourself in situations where you simply must go ahead with a contract or a travel plan or a collaboration or an agreement or whatever is going on for you. But that's okay. Just bear in mind that most big contracts and commitments and potentially even big purchases that you do make, that you are planning some kind of permanence with, will likely come up for review, revision, assessment, redirects, and whatnot by the time the next Mercury retrograde comes around. So at the time of me recording this video, the next one after this one in April is going to be as we get into August. So for experimentation and testing roads and making temporary arrangements that you can reconsider in a few months, where you don't want to fully commit, but you do want to see what's going on, you do want to try something out, this is actually a really good time. And if you do want something to stick or you're already determined to make something stick, you've just got to make sure, again, you have that fine-toothed comb handy. This is also a great time for any kind of retrievals, revisits, restarts, and retries. And you may find that during this time, old projects, old goals, old connections may start themselves over again, or retry themselves, or revisit your world in some fashion. And this is a time where you get a chance to also maybe get recover some money or retrieve some assets that were maybe lost or put in the wrong places or dispersed in some way, because we can also do a lot of recovery in that sense as well. However, it is important on the topic of revisits and reconnects to pay close attention to when these things happen, if they do. If something is coming back to stay in your life, right? It's not just coming back because of the retrograde. It is going to come back either A, in or through a new form, or B, through replacements to the old conditions themselves, or the old situation itself. So an example would be, say Peter has an opportunity to get his stand-up act off the ground after putting it on ice for a few years, but he's not going back to his old haunts. Same goal, different place, and likely working with different people. That is a revisit and a reconnect and a retry. Now, these could be people that he knows right now, but he maybe hasn't had any kind of real concerted effort made, right? This isn't something that's gained priority. This isn't something that's really an active and engaged commitment yet. But maybe those people around him are bringing in an opportunity to retry and revisit that goal, coming in, right, as the replacements for what he was working with in the past, or coming closer as replacements for what he was working with in the past. Another example for you could be, say, Tina has an opportunity to take a transfer to a position that she was passed up for, which would have been a promotion for her in the past. But she will need to be ready to adjust because it's not the crowd or the environment or maybe even the location she was aiming towards in the past. And so it's, again, a retry, a revisit, and a reconnect, but instead of maybe getting that position at the campus or in the building that she works at now, it might be in another campus or in another building in another part of town or in another state or whatever, but she still gets that chance that she missed out on before. All kinds of different things can come up in this way, right? There's a feeling of same but different, and that's a good rule of thumb to also keep in mind. Something has to be different about the return for it to be legit. If it is just coming back and we're just kind of doing the same thing we did before and all the pieces are falling in the same place, or it looks like nothing has changed whatsoever, there isn't a new branch, there isn't a new story, there isn't a new adventure, there aren't new anythings going on, there aren't any, alterations to what was, then it's likely that this is coming back as part of a revision and review process, kind of here to remove attachments and aspects of us or maybe others involved that have held on too much, keeping ourselves or others trapped in these patterns. And so that can also be a priority, right, of Mercury retrograde, correcting, perfecting, reversing, undoing, and refining in that way. Make sure there is an acceptable newness to what could be coming back. And again, sometimes new can come out of things that are already around, but their positions or their roles or their, what's going on in your life, how things are performing in your life are changing. And sometimes it's newness coming in addition to a retry of the old. And if something is just the same as it was, part and parcel, all the way across, let it be. That's just a few tips on how to take advantage of a Mercury retrograde, because this doesn't have to be suffering for everybody, right? That's why it's important to look at astrology as kind of like a weather pattern, where we are just observing a shift, and the people who shift with the shift are the people who thrive during it, and the people who kind of just haphazardly wander around and get crashed around and, just kind of cry for help, they're the ones that kind of get knocked around the most. If anything, Mercury retrograde's probably trying to alert something there. We want to make sure that we are working with these energies and working with what they support. So what can we tell about Mercury retrograde in Aries 2024 April? And we're going to talk about some important aspects here because we do have 4. Mercury retrograde is going to conjunct the Sun, it's going to conjunct Chiron, it's going to conjunct Venus, and even on the last day of his retrograde, when he turns direct, he's going to also conjunct the North Node. And all of this is taking place in Aries. While I will be listing specific dates, it's vital to remember that these mark trends and influences that are getting underway this month, and we might be kind of feeling this sooner, or this could be also setting trends that kind of carry on even into May and June. Do not make the mistake of clinging to calendar dates when it comes to astrology. Mercury will have already made a journey through Aries, for that matter, almost entirely by this time. And so a lot of these themes could also even be present as we go into April. It's just going to be happening in varying degrees of intensity. And we've, of course, got this getting amplified by the Sun and Venus, amplified by the solar eclipse, which we'll talk about in another video, and amplified even later in April with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which will have a video of its own as well. So what about just Mercury? Let's let Mercury have his own time on stage. These four aspects can tell us the most about April and how it's going to be going to work with all of these shifts, not only in April, but again, and on into May and June. So the four main theme drivers with Mercury retrograde's backward move or backward appearing move would be his conjunction to the Sun in Aries, which is all about hectic, positive discovery. When we have Mercury retrograde conjunct the Sun, we have an influx of very helpful, again, very positive energy coming in, but it is threatening in some way, shape, or form things in our life that we should be releasing, or we should be getting ready to alter our courses from, right? Part of the revision, redirection, the reform, refining going on. But it's happening in a way that almost feels too fast, or it's happening in a way that creates a lot of conflicts of availability or possibly conflicts of interest. This is positive energy disrupting familiar problems, and so that can stir up things, right? When we introduce positivity to negativity, when we introduce function to dysfunction, when we introduce movement to stagnancy, there can often be a mess that can get kicked up. It's kind of like pouring clean water into a glass of mud. It shakes up all of the mud that's settled on the bottom, and it keeps shaking everything up until all of that mud is displaced and you just have a glass of clean water. And that is what Mercury retrograde conjunct the Sun is all about. Now, the hecticness of the movement is one thing, but what's really cool is that we also have this discovery energy going on at the same time, where we are finding diamonds in the rough, right? Jewels in that mud that maybe we would have missed, gold, gold doubloons and all of those kinds of things. When we go through the discovery part of this experience, we see things that maybe were hidden gems that we couldn't see because of the mud or something that was in our way or pulling all of our attention or our focus in the wrong direction. This can also be a time where this discovery energy, that's coming in to help us also removes a lot of blockages out of our path, not only so that we can see them, but so that we can engage them. The second influencer here is the Chiron conjunction, which is going to be peaking on and around the 15th of the month. And this is really bringing in that reversing, redirecting, and correcting focus. Because with Chiron, of course, there can be this focus on what hurts, right? It's the baggage, it's the unfinished business, it's the wounds, it's the negativity that is exerting its influence over our world, whether it's something that we carry or that we maintain or sustain ourselves, or something that has followed us into the present. When we have Mercury retrograde conjunct Chiron, and of course the ripple effect that it's having on the entire month of April, it's not just going to happen on the 15th, right? That's just the epicenter. There's a radius, an area of effect going on throughout the entire calendar of April with this one. You're going to see a lot of reversing go to work, especially when it comes to reversing hurts, reversing maybe losses, or reversing courses down bad roads. Now, whether these are bad roads that you've been led down, or maybe bad roads that you have had a project or a path go down, or maybe bad roads that we missed a turn somewhere, or however far or however long, it doesn't matter. Mercury retrograde conjunct Chiron is doing a correction course for everybody with this one. This is also a great time to just kind of reverse any kind of negative influence that's been exerted over your life for however long. And this is also going to be doing a lot of undo work as well. So undoing things. Now, I will say that this can catch some people by surprise. I've seen transits like this occur in a person's personal chart, Mercury retrograde going over their personal Chiron in readings, and that can, create a lot of upsets in situations where either out of a lack of awareness or maybe just a lack of readiness or just a complete shock, people might be kind of thrown off. But pay attention to what is also getting reversed in a negative sense because of this. What is getting an opportunity to be redirected in its course to a better end. After that, our third major influencer of the month, again, a radiating epicenter, is Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. And this is where we see a lot of revisits, retrieving, and reconnecting getting emphasized here, because Venus, of course, is the planet of love, favor, popularity, affection, and also it is considered the lesser benefic, so it also rules things like luxuries, comforts, and even money to a certain degree, to a certain extent, certainly magnetism. And when we have Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus, this is a time where lost assets, lost monies, lost resources, lost support, and even missing pieces of our life can start gravitating towards us. Now, these could be things of old, or these could be new. But again, if they are old, they need to have something new about them. Remember that. Or these could be replacing things that have been missing in our life for a while. This can also show up in the form of reconnects with things that maybe we have distanced ourselves from or have been distanced from us, but are actually better closer, whether we are closer to that or it is closer to us. And if there has been maybe, some confusion going on with a path, whether it's a work path, a career path, a family path, a relationship path, and notions of direction or closeness, who should do what, this is going to also be a period, especially in the latter half of April, where the sorting out of what movements, reconnects, and revisits or retrievals need to happen and what those courses are going to be. And then finally, we've got for our fourth big influencer of the month, of course, Mercury retrograde conjunct the North Node. And this is about reordering. And again, there's an epicenter to this, so a lot of us are already kind of feeling this as we go through the beginnings of April, because Mercury is, already made an engagement with the North Node. So this is about reordering and resetting our compass. This is about retrying, and this is also about getting a chance to try things on for size. The North Node is about our biggest challenges and our biggest rewards. And so when we have Mercury retrograde on top of the North Node, sometimes what is true north in our lives needs to change. And we might find that a reordering of things could send us in a new direction, or maybe reset us on a course that maybe we strayed from once upon a time or never embarked upon. This is a time to retry paths untaken or paths unfinished. It would, of course, require things to show up in new form, right? So maybe it's a path unfinished, but we get back to that path a new way, or it's a venture or a relationship or a project that was unfinished, but it finishes a different way with a different outcome or different people or different resources, different surroundings, however it's going to go. This is a time where the, again, rearranging of the compass and the getting recoordinated is going to be the strongest in the month of April. Just keep in mind with Mercury, retrograde conjunct the North Node, it also means he's opposed to the South Node. And so this can also be a time where, while all of this reordering is happening, we may also have to face the reality about some crutches that we have in our life as well. But regardless of that, Aries, Mercury retrograde is a really, really good one for everybody, because it is a time of propulsion and growth and pioneering and initiation and new adventures It just seems to be happening in a very roundabout way. So that is what I've got for you all. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You know I appreciate it. And should you ever wish to get a session with me, you can go on ahead to my website. It's integrativemysticism.com.